What is it? Say something.
Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Just, well. So today we're going to be going over a new species of small dinosaur has been discovered, as well as a species of Ice Age deer, and even going further into depth with the Ice Age when it comes to brown bears. And we are streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. So let's dive back into the Mesozoic era. So from Sci News, Cretaceous dinosaur had impressive mane and shoulder ribbons. I've not really heard of a species of dinosaur with the mane, but it could be referring to like a wide variety of feathers around the neck. So, a main theropod dinosaur with elaborate filamentous structures has been identified by a research team led by University of Portsmouth paleontologists. So, who is this guy? Seems like it could be some mysterious lineage of theropod, or it could even be just an odd species of maybe a Lasmerian iguanodontid or ornithopod, but I very much doubt it considering the structure of the forelimbs and even the head structure seems far too theropod-like. Even when comparing it to like certain thessalosauриans, yeah, that's also when you look at like the upper back or even the upper part of the tail, it almost looks like it has elongated caudal and back vertebrae, which is not very common when it comes to smaller species of theropod dinosaurs. This is more of a trait that you see in certain species of Carcharodontosaurs, Spinosaurs, and even certain members of the Metracanthosaur lineage of dinosaurs. But as well, even the ornithopods, like different species of iguanodontids from the early Cretaceous, and as well hadrosaurs from the late Cretaceous of Asia and Africa. So the newly discovered dinosaur species lived about 110 million years ago, the Aptian stage of the Cretaceous period in what is now Brazil. Named Ubarahara hubatus, the ancient animal was chicken-sized with the mane of long fur down its back. That's interesting. I'm not familiar with the word mane being used specifically for anything besides the neck. I mean, I find that quite odd. I would just assume maybe it would be. Actually, I don't know what other word you could use.
I've never even heard mane used outside of a mammal.
Yeah, I'd say maybe like certain times when birds will puff up their feathers and it looks like they have an enlarged mane, especially like after they were dust bathing. So it also had long, flat, stiff shoulder ribbons of keratin, each with a small, sharp ridge running along the middle. Its arms were covered in fur like filaments down to the hands. What is especially unusual about the beast is the presence of two very long, probably stiff ribbons on either side of its shoulders that were probably used for display, for mate attraction, intermale rivalry, or to frighten off foe, said co author Professor David Martle, paleontologist in the School of the Environment, Geography, and Geosciences at the University of Portsmouth. We cannot prove that the specimen is a male, but given the disparity between male and female birds, it appears likely the specimen was a male and young too, which is surprising given most complex display abilities are reserved for mature adult males. Given its flamboyance, we can imagine that the dinosaur may have indulged in elaborate dancing to show off its display structures. Actually, in many reconstructions, when it comes to um, theropod dinosaurs specifically, it hasn't just been different species of smaller carnivores, but even different medium-sized species, like even different abelisaurs or allosaurs. Even members of Neotheropoda from the early Jurassic have been reconstructed as creating a bit of a dance-like behavior during the mating season. And it's very possible with certain Cretaceous larger species of theropods, this would have occurred too. So let's bring up an early Jurassic individual, the Dracovenator. Draciovenator.
Older picture.
Yeah, so despite this animal looking somewhat okay, and specifically the Dracovenator is the larger carnivore in this depiction, and it seems to be hunting after or simply preying upon the ancestors to animals like the later heterodontosaur herbivores, which were never very large species of ornithopods or ornithischians, I think would be the correct terminology or taxonomically the correct name, considering these animals didn't reach much more than maybe 8 feet in length. They're pushing a little over.
Sarah Zen says, "Hi."
Well, welcome aboard, Theropod. Or maybe like 8 feet, so pushing somewhere around 2.2 meters. Now, the Draco Venator in this instance is definitely much larger. At least when it comes to the length of this animal, it's possible that it could have reached somewhere between 16 to maybe 20 feet in length, but it was quite light for just the overall size of the animal. So pushing somewhere between 4.9 to 6 meters and probably weighed upwards of 5 to 600 pounds, or maybe pushing somewhere around 330 to 300 and wait a second. I said 5 to 600 pounds. That would be somewhere around like 230 to maybe 270 kilograms. But given the length of this animal, it is quite lightweight considering Dilophosaurus, for instance, which would still not evolve for at least another 8 to 10 million years. Considering Dracovenator evolved over in South Africa about 200 million years ago. So this is far before animals like Dilophosaurus or Dilophosauridae would evolve. So this is also one of the earlier members of Neotheropoda, even though technically you had different species evolving back in the Triassic period over 228 million years ago.
I have a question. They have this one feathered and his teeth sticking out, but not feathered.
Yeah, when it comes to different early Jurassic theropods, like Dracovenator, Dilophosaurus, Cryolophosaurus, they have been reconstructed in recent years as more feathered, despite there not really being any evidence for many of them having feathers, at least as adults.
Someone made a
Um,
turkey looking one.
yeah, and some others are more of just scaly. This isn't bad. They definitely massively increased the crest structure and made it look much more like a Dilophosaurus, at least when it comes to the crest alone. But a bit shorter, also curved it upwards slightly. But yeah, I like the whole more bird-like sort of depiction. They even bloated like the lips to an extent. Yeah, I mean, this isn't bad. It's very possible you even had it where the different species of early theropods were quite colorful. This looks like somebody, if they're trying to depict a Dracovenator, decided to give it a very cassowary look. Um, yeah, these animals didn't really have a robust horn-like structure on the top of their heads, but I mean, it's an interesting,
They put some
s-
work into it.
yeah, mythical depiction. Yeah, that's not bad for a Dracovenator if this is someone's model. It
Uh,
does have a bit more of like a Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus sort of in appearance. The skull is a bit different compared to Dilophosaurus. I'd say in some cases it might be a bit broader. Also when it comes to the overall like arm size for this animal, it's not too far away from like the Dilophosaurus sort of arm structure. Now, it was originally classified as Syntarsis, but it wasn't until 1850 that okay. Unless I might be mistaking it for another animal. Yeah, I think I might be mistaking him for another animal over in England because he's from South Africa. We do have a wide variety of different species of prosauropods also at around this time in the early Jurassic occurring in South Africa, like the smaller Massospondylus, which was maybe somewhere around 10 to 11 feet in length, or pushing maybe 3 to 3.2 meters, and was just feeding on different species of smaller shrubs, younger conifers, and different species of ferns.
Okay, I don't know if this is the same person that did these, but
Yeah, it seems that way. I mean, it definitely seems to be the same type of creature. Yeah, cassowaries are a species of bird endemic to Australia. But um, they also did not evolve from any large species of dinosaurs. They all living large terrestrial birds like the ostriches, the rheas, the emus, the turkeys, all derived from smaller species of virtually bird theropods um, from the Cretaceous and not a large species of dinosaurs. So technically, the birds have been around since the late Jurassic, around 150 million years ago. Okay, let's head back to the article. So, Ubarahara hubatus mane is thought to have been controlled by muscles, allowing it to be raised. In a similar way, a dog raises its hackles or a porcupine raises its spines when threatened. Any creature with movable hair or feathers as a body coverage has a great advantage in streamlining the body contour for faster hunts or escapes, but also to capture or release heat. The elaborate plumage of Ubarahara hubatus might have improved its chances of survival. Added lead author Robert Smith, also from the School of the Environment, Geography, and Geosciences at the University of Portsmouth. So, where was this guy found again? Brazil. Okay. Funny, that's a strange name. Well, that is a fascinating specimen. I think there's a quite a variety of the feathers that are still intact. Yeah, like you see the feathers over here. I think there's quite a variety surrounding the core of the animal. I wonder if there's certain maybe gastrolids preserved. I mean, it's very possible you could have had it where smaller species of theropods that were also somewhat omnivorous might have swallowed small stones to help grind the vegetation that they fed on. Yeah, it's exquisitely well preserved. It's like looking at Caudipteryx or Microraptor or even Sinosauropteryx specimens. Probably Sinornithosaurus. So the fossilized partial skeleton of Ubarahara hubatus was collected from the lower Cretaceous crater formation of northeast Brazil. Ubarahara hubatus is the first non-avian dinosaur to be described from Brazil's crater formation. That's interesting. I have heard of other creatures found from the crater formation. So, and in fact, other dinosaurs, unless it was just simply more recent. So that's a bit surprising. A shallow inland sea laid down about 110 million years ago. Oh, okay. I might be also forgetting different marine reptiles. That's probably what it's pointing towards. It is also the first non avian dinosaur found on the adjacent or ancient supercontinent of Gondwana with preserved skin. That is truly surprising. I would have thought maybe we found certain species of dinosaurs further back in some part of South America, Africa, Australia, or Antarctica in this case. Like, I was thinking we even found maybe skin of Cryolophosaurus, despite it being from the early Jurassic of Antarctica about 192 million years ago. Okay, let's bring up another species of carnivore. Okay, Siamotyrannus. So Siamotyrra. Okay.
Okay, I'm only doing this because he's colorful.
Something dinosaurs battle world. Well, despite the name, because it has Tyrannus in the name and it has Siamo, considering there's a species of theropod dinosaur called Siamosaurus, which is a spinosaur from the early Cretaceous of Thailand. It is, um, which is true. We do have a species of spinosaur from Thailand, but somewhere around 120 million years ago. This was far earlier. This was pushing somewhere around 175 million years ago during the Jurassic. And this is also a member of the Metriacanthosauridae lineage of theropod dinosaurs. Now, there's also Tyrannus in his name. which can lead many to assume that this is some species of tyrannosaur related to T. rex itself. But it is not. It's far off in the family tree of Neotheropoda, and it actually is a metracanthosaur, which is more of a lineage of megalosaurs. So,
Is that why so many of the pictures look like they're making a something related to a Tyrannosaurus?
somewhat it is possible this animal might have two fingers, but it is quite distantly related to T. rex. And you can say in some instances it does have a bit of a similar skull structure to different species of medium sized or smaller species of tyrannosaurs.
Can we pull this guy on something else?
We might have. Hmm.
No, not the one you're talking about, but him.
Yeah, another species.
Yeah,
I
it
can't.
came up with the same name.
Yeah, I can't recall who it's supposedly was. But this animal was I guess one of the larger medium-sized species of theropods for the Jurassic of Thailand at this point. Or I guess you could say the world in general. It was somewhere around 20 feet in length or pushing 6 meters and probably weighed somewhere around 15 to 1700 pounds or pushing between somewhere around 700 to 800 kilograms. So we got the Tigger.
I thought
Yeah, this is
he looked like Tigger.
um it is actually, I do wonder sometimes, considering certain species of theropods in general, and regardless of the lineage, it could be a member of Dromaeosauridae, it could be a megalosaur or an allosaur, have been reconstructed with stripes. Considering there are a wide variety of different types of creatures today that have stripes, not just tigers or different species of birds, a wide variety of animals, like even different types of amphibians. Now, exactly like a tiger, I honestly don't know, or we don't know in general. Yeah, it is very possible that this animal might have specifically two fingers. So having a somewhat Tyrannosaur sort of a morphology to it, but still distinct enough to be regarded as a member of Metracanthosauridae. Also, the Tyrannosaurs in general, Tyrannosauroideae, has not evolved yet. It won't be for another 10 to 13 million years until the Tyrannosaurs first evolve over in England, like with Proceratosaurus.
That looks like a Tyrannosaur.
Yeah, these two likely never came into contact with each other, unless I am possibly mistaking it for um another species of Metrocanthosaurid, and this animal then possibly inhabited Thailand maybe around like 130 to 140 million years ago, which would be closer to the timeline with Siamosaurus, the Spinosaur in this region. So that possibly could be it. Um, but besides that, let's head back to the article.
Wait a minute.
I would say that this animal seems a little too heavily built in this instance. That's actually a pretty good reconstruction. Was he going after a species of maybe a young sauropod?
That's what I was thinking.
My guess. Yeah. It almost reminds me of like the Giganotosaurus over in like the Giant Claw episode and Chased by Dinosaurs with Nigel Marvin's holding an iguanodontid in its mouth. The
But I can't tell. I mean, I know there's supposed to be feathers, but it looks like he's furry.
yeah, it's the depiction they're giving him. Now, the problem is that this is an adult. I mean, it certainly is possible they might have had feathers, but this is immense. They're also giving him very small arms compared to his body size. Really differs depending on the depiction. Okay, yeah, I was off early Cretaceous, so this is around 130 million years ago, which would make sense as to why we were seeing the Siamosaurus Spinosaur depiction with him. So not the Jurassic. That was another Metracanthosaur I was thinking of. So it's very likely that this animal was going after different species of sauropods in the region, since you had different species reaching over 70 feet in length or pushing somewhere around 20 to 22 meters and also weighing some around 25 to 30 tons. So Urabarihara Hubatus is not only important because of the integumentary structures present for the first time in a non avian dinosaur, completely changing the way of seeing the behavior of certain dinosaurs, said co author Dr. Hector Rivera Silva, a paleontologist at the Museo del Desierto, Mexico. Rather, the scientific value transcends forming a watershed since it is the first evidence for this group in Latin America, as well as one of the few reported for the subcontinent of Gondwana, expanding the knowledge about non avian feathered dinosaurs for America, whose evidence is very scarce. Um, okay. Trying to think. Maybe, you know what? Let's just head on to the next article. So, heading over to the Cenozoic era. So from CBC.ca, mysterious deer fossil unearthed near TTC station identified after almost 50 years. Trent University study links ancient fossil to two species still common across North America. Hmm. Well, that can't be a small fossil crate, so whatever this is, it doesn't seem small. The Torontoceras hypogaius fossil sits on a table in the ROMS Paleontology Collections room from the David McRae Royal Ontario Museum. So, for nearly 50 years, a mysterious fossil unearthed during the construction of Islington subway station has refused to give up its secrets until now. A study by Trent University in partnership with the Royal Ontario Museum and the Royal Alberta Museum has found a link between the fossil and two species found across North America. The more analysis we did, it became clear it was most closely related to whitetail and mule deer, but likely a distinct species that diverged around 3 million years ago, said Aaron Scuffer, an associate professor at Trent University who worked on the study. That was definitely a long time ago for these two species of deer. Now, I believe it is possibly the mule deer that has only been around for about 20,000 years. They are very recent, really the last 10,000 years of the late Ice Age or the Pleistocene. And 3 million years ago, that's at the very last, what, maybe 500,000 years of the Pliocene epoch. So that's quite astounding. So the fossil, dubbed by scientists as Torontoceras hypogaius or horned Toronto deer from underground, sounds Australian, is believed to be one of a kind and almost 12,000 years old. Oh, wow. That's at the very end of the Ice Age. Like, literally, that's right as you hop into the Holocene epoch. And it's helping to provide a snapshot into what life looked like back then. Okay. Um, let's bring up a moose. The Cerphalsis latrifans. So Cervalceslat. Okay.
It's a little blurry.
Um, yeah, I mean, this is pretty much him. So this animal did have slightly longer antlers. Well, actually, they were quite a bit longer than compared to today's Alcis alcis or a modern day moose. This animal lived over in the Ice Age over about 1.2 million years ago, in different parts of Eurasia. It doesn't seem like we have any evidence of this species of moose inhabiting North America, which is quite strange considering there are a wide variety of different species of animals like the woolly mammoth, woolly rhinos, cave lions, bison that we have evidence over in different parts of Europe, Asia, and North America, but this animal decided to not cross the Bering Land Bridge for some reason.
Is this just a moose?
Yeah, this is a Shiras moose from like Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming, judging by the antler structure. If that's an authentic picture. Um, but it was probably around the same size of a moose today, but maybe slightly taller. Um, It seems like with Cervalsis latrifons, this animal might have pushed somewhere between 1,500 to 1,700 pounds. We do have certain moose today over in Alaska that can push just over 1,800 pounds or a little over 700, not 700, 800 kilograms. So this moose was probably on average pushing somewhere between 700 to 750 kilograms. But its antler structure is definitely very distinct from today's moose, which tend to have a much just larger, broader sort of an antler form. And these animals, or this specific species, for some reason, decided to really put a lot of effort into just extending the overall branch or the stem of their antlers, which is quite odd. You could say in some cases it might have helped with defense, but probably only for a certain part of the year, considering very similar to today's moose, elk, reindeer. You have it where they really can only use their antlers efficiently for a handful of months in the fall and possibly early winter, depending on the habitat that they exist in. Also, just varying on the population. Outside of that, they either don't really have much of an antler or it's quite soft and it just consists of velvet and it's very delicate. So it's not really useful for defense. So, probably during like later August, September, October, even November, December, these animals could use their antlers for defense, possibly extending into January, maybe even February as well. But that would probably be a lot less the case, especially back in the Ice Age. Yeah, this is a really good reconstruction of the Cervalsis latrifons moose. So it could probably reach well over 7 to 8 feet in height. We're pushing maybe like 2.4 meters. So back to this mysterious deer, the Torontoceros. It looks like it was adapted for a wider, more open space in the forested area you would have seen in the past few hundred years, said Oliver Hudrith, a collections technician at the Royal Ontario Museum. It would have been more tundra like, which probably shaped this deer. I'm not sure if it necessarily would have been more tundra like, but possibly a bit more of an open grassland. However, I mean, looking at, yeah, also if referring to 12,000 years ago, I would say that the tundra hadn't really massively expanded at that point. It will happen probably slightly later into like the Younger Dryas event or the earlier Holocene epoch. So, a sketch of what Tyrannosaurus hypogaius may have looked like when it was alive. The wide antlers initially led scientists to believe it was a species of caribou by Sherry Owen. Huh. Moving forward, Schaefer said researchers would like to better understand what led to the species' extinction. We know climate was involved, and maybe it was a very small population that started to accumulate a lot of bad things in its DNA and couldn't adapt. The fossil has been in the ROM's possession since its discovery, but Hatteras said the main roadblock in identifying its origin was that technology hadn't caught up yet. Having this DNA lab allows us to answer questions we previously thought were unanswerable. Looking at samples that are thousands of years old and fitting them into their family tree, the gallery that houses the fossil at the ROM is currently under renovation, but once it reopens, Torontoceros hypogaius will be on display for all to see. Um, I mean, it didn't really give us an in-depth or much about like what was going on with its overall genealogy, but okay. It's definitely slightly interesting with the Torontoceros. Yeah, you could say he does have a slight, especially like the snout, or at least how it's being depicted
He's kinda
as
cute.
a, yeah, a bit of like a reindeer sort of a look. I'd say reindeer have some of the largest like lips compared to their overall skull size compared to pretty much the whole lineage of modern day deer. Like even when comparing it to a moose, it's more of like you're just looking at a giant nose. But I mean, so are you with caribou too. Okay, let's head to another part of the Ice Age. So from Earth.com, yeah, this is probably like Kamchatka brown bear, some Kodiak over in Alaska or Eastern Russia. This is definitely not or likely not a Japanese brown bear. Considering Japanese brown bears tend to have more of like a striped sort of a look, they're a bit darker and the ears are much taller and rounder compared to the Kamchatka or Kodiak brown bears. Most other, yeah, I guess I have to be careful with that statement. You can have a wide variety of Asiatic brown bear populations with very round ears. They're quite aggressive too. So, brown bears survived the ice age by repeatedly changing their jaws. Before the last ice age ended, Europe's brown bears repeatedly reshaped their jaws as the climate swung between glacial cold and warmer periods. The same two jaw forms appeared again and again, each better suited to a different environment. That seems to be the case with even different subspecies or populations of brown bears today. Having a slightly different skull structure, not just when it comes to their teeth arrangement compared to others. So, likely due to the different types of plants and animals that they're feeding on, fungi. So, a new study suggests flexibility may have helped brown bears survive while their closest relative, the cave bear, disappeared. At the very end of the ice age of the Pleistocene epoch, considering cave bears, they were around for several 100,000 years and coexisted with the brown bear. So I find that a bit of an odd statement. And same thing goes for polar bears for a long time. Considering polar bears, they didn't necessarily evolve from the brown bear; they more branched off at the exact same time from the brown bear by the same common ancestor around 500,000 years ago. So,
Wait, wait,
um,
you're saying it branched off from the brown bear or it branched off from another bear?
yeah, it's more of like the brown bear and the polar bear diverged close to the same time. So, rather than specializing for a single way of life, brown bears adapted their feeding anatomy as the climate changed. The study was led by Anneke H. van Hetteren at the Bavarian State Collections of Natural History. Her team measured the lower jaws of nearly 200 bears, more than half of them fossils. So all these are brown bears. Wondering if they also stuck in the cave bear too. Probably. Of those jaws, 21 belong to fossil brown bears, the same species, Ursus arctos, that still roams parts of Europe today. The rest were living bears and their close relatives, among them the plant eating cave bear. The cave bear, we do have evidence for it being omnivorous. And the meat eating polar bear. They're also omnivorous, but to a smaller extent. They'll be feeding on different species of like tundra grasses or mosses, as well as different species of berries if they're marooned on land for parts of the summer or early fall, which gave the team a wide spread of diets to measure against. Rather than eyeball the bones, researchers mapped dozens of three-dimensional reference points onto each jaw with a digitizing arm and a surface scanner. I would like to bring up somebody else though. The Arctotherium and also another animal. Arctother. So basically another species of large bear from South America, bigger than the cave bear and also larger than the short-faced bear of North America, or basically the Arctotus simus.
Okay, this thing seems oversized.
Well, it could be trying to reference like the largest Arctotherium angostidens that we have ever, or that supposedly has been discovered. So you could have had certain fat individuals possibly reach somewhere around 3,500 to 4,000 pounds. So making it the largest bear and possibly mammalian carnivore, terrestrial carnivore to exist because blue whales are carnivores. They're feeding on krill. Um, but this animal was likely on its all fours or being quadrupedal, probably around 6.6 feet in height when it came to a larger individual. Many Arctotherium were probably smaller, so maybe pushing somewhere around maybe 2,200 to 2,600 pounds, or pushing somewhere around 1,000 to maybe 1,300 kilograms. So when it comes to the height on all fours with those individuals, they're probably pushing somewhere between like maybe 5'10" to 6 foot, or pushing maybe 1.8 meters, and probably could still rear up on their hind legs and reach at least 12 feet in height. Whereas those extremely large individuals are probably pushing somewhere around 14 to 15 feet in height, or pushing over 4.3 meters. So we also have evidence for this species of bear being a pure carnivore. Let's bring up a species of ground sloth, the Lestodon, Lestodon. So it is very likely that this animal was also feeding on different species of berries. It was also probably feeding on different species of leaf vegetation as well. But we do have evidence from this specific species of herbivore over in South America with preserved bite marks on the animal, and also indicating that they did not heal. And the only carnivore in the region with a jaw-like structure that would, or that simply matched the bite marks, is the Arctotherium angustidens itself. So this is proof that the short-faced bear from South America was hunting giant ground sloths like the Lestodon. Lestodon was probably the third largest ground sloth to evolve. This animal was probably around 2 to I think 5 tons possibly. And likely though, I think the Arctotherium in that instance was going after a 2-ton individual. And yes, the ground sloth is very likely just feeding on different species of trees.
It doesn't say for sure that's who this is.
It very well could be. But it is interesting considering you would assume that this animal was very capable of fighting off even something as large as this bear. But at least for a 2-ton Lestodon, that we don't know if maybe it was already injured, maybe it had some sort of an illness. Was it maybe starving? So that is definitely a big question. I also think it might have occurred somewhere around 25 to 50,000 years ago, but I have to double check on that. It's definitely during the later stage of the Ice Age or the Pleistocene epoch over in South America. But it definitely shows that the Arctotherium was definitely capable of taking on things slightly larger than itself. So you could say a bit similar to like what grizzly bears will do over in different parts of, I'd say, the northern United States, Canada, different parts of Europe or Russia, where they will go after occasionally younger bison or female moose, not really ever male moose, especially with fully developed antlers. But that's probably not a good comparison considering the Arctotherium is taking on an animal that can wrestle it too, and also severely injure it as well. So yeah, that is a big question. Like, how was it able to take on this robust of an animal? But also the fact that the sloth was able to let the pair just simply bite into the bone of this animal. So, and what I mean by that is just simply it's just showing the immense jaw power of the bear itself, which is probably one of the most robust species when it comes to just overall um, bite force of any species of land mammal. So quite remarkable. Okay, so let's head on back to what's going on with the other brown bears. So the reference points clustered around the tooth row and the place where the masseter, the thick muscle that clamps the jaw shut for chewing, attaches to the bone. That muscle does the heavy work of grinding, where it anchors on the jaw sets how much leverage it has. So small moves in the attachment point change how hard a bear can crush tough food. So, two jaw designs kept returning. Until this study, no one had tracked the brown bear jaw across the Ice Age using its form rather than its chemistry. Earlier attempts to read the diets of ancient bears leaned on chemical traces in the bones. One analysis of Siberian remains found that brown bears changed their diet as the ice sheets retreated. So, cold period bears carried a longer row of cheek teeth and a chewing muscle set for more leverage. That build delivers extra grinding power. So it's almost like during the colder, more severe periods of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age, the bears almost became more um, herbivorous because it's talking about there's more grinding power. Their jaws match those of brown bears living today in cold northern regions or at high elevations.
Maybe they had tasted berries and decided they needed to adapt.
Yeah, you can have it where different types of berries are quite chewy, so that could make sense. The warm period bears went the other way. They had a shorter tooth row and a chewing muscle that surrendered some of that leverage. A lighter build similar to that to modern European brown bears. Yeah, which subspecies though? That's my question. Because you have it where um like brown bears over in different parts in like northern Europe are much more carnivorous than those over in like Greece, Italy, Iberia, or Spain and Portugal. Occasional ones over in like Slovenia. So two fossils make the contrast clear. One came from Le Regardeux cave in the Dordogne region of France and dates to roughly 243,000 years ago, cold stretch of the Ice Age. Yeah, you also have it where, like, over in different parts of Alaska, Canada, they're quite carnivorous, but it also depends on the time of year. Usually it's around like calving season or May, late May, June, even into July. And then after that, they tend to become much more herbivorous. So let's see. Also, the other came from Postes in Extremadura, Spain, and dates to somewhere between 71,000 and 104,000 years ago. One of the Ice Age's warmer spells. Yeah, this is right. 71,000 to 104,000 years ago. Yeah, I guess that's right before the last glacial maximum. So the Spanish fossil carries a shorter tooth row and shorter muscle lever that mark a warm climate bear. The two forms also pay no attention to geological age. Um, I guess also the reason why we're really only finding brown bears in this instance, really this far south, is because of how extensive the glaciers were in the northern hemisphere at this point. It's not necessarily like in certain parts of Canada and Alaska, they couldn't travel through certain corridors within the glacier realms, but for the most part, much of the land was just covered by ice. So, warm type and cold type jaws turn up at different depths within the fossil record. This indicates the brown bear jaw switched back and forth between the two builds many times as glaciers spread and withdrew. Okay. There is another species of deer I'd like to bring up, the Sinomagasaurus. So, Sinomagacerus.
This seems strange.
There he is. So this is a member of Cervidae and is a very unique species of deer. It's quite distantly related to the other large antler deer. I mean, you could even say like Cervalsis latrofons, the other moose. Was I mean had long antlers, but this animal was definitely much more broad when it comes to the overall just antler morphology compared to even Alcis alcis or the moose of today, Cervalsis latrofons, and Megaloceros, so the close relative of the fallow deer. This animal did have larger antlers compared to Megaloceros, especially when it comes to the width. In some cases, you could say it almost like has more of an elk or Rocky Mountain elk sort of a morphology to it. Definitely compared to the Megaloceros or even the different species of moose. But this animal was likely feeding on different species of grasses. It was also probably feeding on different species of shrubs, maybe even occasionally younger species of trees in the Ice Age. Also, probably inhabiting certain more forested habitats compared to, per se, the woolly mammoth in this instance. Yeah, I mean that is him. It is a bit. It's a huge mystery as to why this species of deer decided to evolve antlers with this type of a morphology. So this was over 400,000 years ago over in Eurasia. Yeah, it's also very possible that this animal was hunted by earlier packs of gray wolves over in Eurasia too, as well as Eurasian cave lions and probably even cave hyenas at certain points too. Yeah, they're making him, or at least it seems a bit smaller in this instance. He is not the only species of deer to contain a somewhat similar antler morphology, but maybe just due to the overall antler structure, whatever this species was feeding on, maybe it was extremely high in calcium and phosphorus, and that's why it was able to grow antlers with this type of a look. Now, did tigers or earlier species of tiger prey on this animal? I mean, it certainly is possible in their more northern ranges, considering um, tigers, you had it where they were inhabiting different parts of like northern Kazakhstan, well, even into Russia. So it's very possible they might have come into contact with animals like the Eurasian cave lion. Um, See, like even maybe different African lion, well, like Panthera leo populations over in different parts of Asia. It doesn't seem tigers ever stepped into Europe. So yeah, this is a bit of a mystery. It certainly is possible, considering the Cynomagaceros was probably around 15 to 1600 pounds or a little over 700 kilograms. Also, when it came to the height, it was probably pushing somewhere around 7 feet or pushing around 2.1 meters. I think a big question also with some of these animals is whether or not they could have bugled, especially when looking at the overall neck and skull structure of Cynomagaceros. I think it's very possible he might have, like, similar to today's not red deer, elk, or maybe somewhat roared like the red deer of today. They're definitely giving him a somewhat sort of fallow deer type of a complexion,
Oh, I found a toy.
but also giving him that enlarged neck structure, sort of indicating a deer is in the rut or the breeding season. Oh yeah, that is definitely not a bad reconstruction.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
they're
found a
sticking with that
picture. I
spotted.
like it. And when I try to pull it up, it's so small.
Actually, it's not the fallow deer. That's the spotted pigment is reminding me of. It's the cheetah deer over in different parts of South Asia, especially India. Yeah, I mean, that is a good reconstruction. Oh, I think now either that is a fallow deer or it's possibly a close relative of the fallow deer from the Ice Age. Well, I know I've mentioned like megalosauruses, but the very similar looking species, like the fallow deer. But the animal I'm thinking of does not have as many angles or points as modern day fallow deer. Yeah, there's the antler structure, very broad,
How long have we known about this thing?
wide variety of years. Um, but a long time, at least when it comes to different paleo discoveries. I don't know the precise date. Okay. Let's go back to the bears. Yes, it is possible you could have had like cave bears or brown bears in this instance prey on this animal. Might be a bit challenging, but certainly is possible in terms of speed. So, a jaw that changes creates a puzzle. Ordinary genetic evolution works over thousands of generations, far too slow to keep pace with a climate that rarely held steady for long during the Ice Age. So, the authors lean toward faster, reversible routes instead. One is phenotypic, or yeah, phenotypic plasticity, where a young bear's jaw grows differently depending on what it spends its life chewing. The other is epigenetic inheritance, in which the activity of genes gets turned up or down and handed to offspring without any change to the DNA sequence. So, why cave bears vanished? Neither locks a bear in. Both can switch on and off within a generation or two, and both can run in reverse. That reversibility may be what decided who survived. The cave bear had committed hard to a plant diet, and it cannot reverse that specialization when the climate lurched at the close of the Ice Age. It wasn't just the climate, it was just the immense climatic or ecological change that occurred with different soils, different types of plant ecosystems or plant communities, I guess would be the better term, like fungi communities, and even when it came to the animals that the cave bear preyed on, it had changed not just for the cave bear, but for most megafauna at the end of the Pleistocene. So, a separate study of cave bear teeth argues the animal had lost the dietary flexibility that omnivores kept in reverse. The brown bear kept that flexibility, went on eating whatever the season offered, and came through. That talent, the researchers argue, is central to the bear's long survival. Their ability to cope with such extreme climatic fluctuations likely played a decisive role in their evolutionary success, explains Van Herten.
You said fluctuations.
Yeah, fluctuations.
I know, but you said fluctuations.
Oh,
That was funny. We
eh,
flushed the cave bear.
yeah. Or I was thinking of that movie, Flushed Away. So there is a large gap between the warm and cold fossil jaws. It runs about as deep as the difference between a modern grizzly and today's European brown bear. And hit the subscribe button now! The variation is enough that the fossil animals might be better understood as a series of distinct climate linked forms rather than one unchanging bear. That has a bearing on the presence because brown bears face a fast moving climate once more. That flexibility may still persist today. So, one study of wild European populations found their diets are still steered far more by what mothers teach their cubs than by fixed genetics. This keeps their options open as conditions change. Hmm. There is somebody else. Let's bring up Castoroides. So, Castoides. So a giant, virtually rodent, but specifically beaver, really from North America. I think it's possible the animal was inhabiting Eurasia. It's really known from different areas of the United States and into Canada. Except this animal dwarfed today's Eurasian or American beaver. So, whereas Eurasian beavers might reach somewhere around 80 pounds or pushing a little over 35 kilograms, North American beavers can reach around 100 to 120, 100 to 120 pounds and pushing some around 50 kilograms.
I don't know if this is him for sure or not.
Could be. This animal might actually be a modern beaver up top. Except they're giving the Castoroides a big, like, not a muskrat, a, naked mole rat sort of a morphology. Um, yeah. I mean, very likely,
Is that the
this
size?
no, is bigger,
Oh,
much bigger. Unless she's, like, 6'2". But even then, when it comes to the overall weight, this animal could reach 600 pounds or pushing
Jesus.
over 270 kilograms. So, this animal was also likely feeding on a very, oh, yeah, that was probably him. So,
I just thought he was funny.
I mean, the problem is when it comes to the incisors of this animal, it wasn't necessarily a negative problem for, um, living the ice age at this point. I mean, it was definitely very efficient as taking down different types of northern trees. And also probably didn't really inhabit the mammoth steppe, considering there aren't any trees over in the mammoth steppe. So yeah, there is a tooth. Um, what about it? Oh, so
I just saw the tooth.
the large or immense incisors to the front teeth could very well be used as a weapon. I mean, if it were to bite on something like even one of the larger, like short-faced bears at that point, it could very well sever certain tendons depending on where it bites and possibly kill the bear on impact or shortly later. But still, it might have probably just instead fled from something like a 12 to 1,300 pound short faced bear pushing somewhere around 600 kilograms. But this animal was likely mostly herbivorous, so feeding on different species of trees, aquatic plants, possibly omnivorous occasionally, like today's beavers, might maybe even scavenging certain deer or maybe even mammoth carcasses at certain points. But it definitely inhabited the different lakes and slower flowing, like um, guess what tributaries to certain rivers, but they would have virtually created their own small lakes or ponds like today's
Their
beavers as
tails
well.
were completely different.
Yeah, I think it is a bit more of like a sort of just much more enhanced, not necessarily a naked mole rat tail. I'm trying to think of somebody else, almost like an armadillo to an extent, but still much wider and definitely having like that fat content similar to a beaver, considering beavers will store fat inside their tails. Um see, I guess another thing. Also, it did coexist with different saber-toothed cats like Smilodon fatalis, as well as dire wolves in certain regions that inhabited
Wait,
over in the United States.
this is from Ark.
Oh yeah, these guys. Um, I never understood their upper incisors hanging out in at least in front of their bottom jaw, but yeah, they're aggressive, big beavers. Very helpful. So let's see. Oh, so when the fossils settle is what the fossils settle is plain enough. Europe's brown bears did not ride out the ice age unchanged. They rebuilt their jaws to match each swing of the climate, then shifted them back again. That knack for reversible change now stands as a leading reason the brown bear outlasted its more rigid cousins. It also gives conservationists a longer view of an animal that has already demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to adapt. It is too bad they didn't show us, like, different pictures of the distinct, maybe even skulls, but even just, like, the teeth of the different bear individuals. Well, like, not just the brown bears, but also for, say, the, polar bears and the cave bears in this instance, but I am surprised that they didn't compare it with, like, short-faced bears, but that is probably due to the fact that short-faced bears are a bit further into the family or the bear family tree as opposed to cave bears. Cave bears were, the closest extinct relative to modern-day brown bears and polar bears. Um Okay, so we'll give everyone about a minute to put any comments in the chat about prehistoric to current animals. Okay. Yeah, actually, while talking about dirt, the Castroides or that giant beaver, if he's here, yeah, I mean, this animal would have used dirt, very likely like today's beavers. That is how they keep their dams so well constructed and just intensely compact. Is bringing in a wide variety of, well, just an immense amount of clay in different areas.
He just asked what's going on.
Yeah, just going over different brown bear populations from certain parts of France and Spain during the Ice Age. So, actually, I think pushing somewhere around 240,000 years ago, and so just before like the late Ice Age part of the Pleistocene. So the late Ice Age starts somewhere around like 110, 100 to 120,000 years ago, and ends about 12,000 years ago. Okay, and yeah, some mysterious species of theropod dinosaur from the early Cretaceous of Brazil that had a wide variety of feathers, and then brought up some giant deer as well. Um, oh, okay, so you popped up fairly recently. I'm trying to think if anything else at the moment. Um, hmm. I do wonder, considering it was talking about like the teeth changes within the different brown bear populations at different points of the ice age. What do we have here? Oh, yeah, the sloth. And when it came to the giant South American brown bear bringing down this animal that we have evidence of. It's I'm thinking that it's also possible with different populations of not just bears, but even different types of mammoths, different species of even like deer, the mastodons, saber-toothed cats, that their teeth might have also slightly changed in different parts of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age as well.
Adrian said it looks like his cousin. Not
Um,
not this, the
yeah, the
beaver.
sloth
Uh,
or oh, the
oh,
beaver.
I don't know if it's the sloth or the beaver.
I mean, I guess both are quite concerning. Um, but yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean that is very possible. It might have even happened with different species of dinosaurs as well. And it's definitely well, that's kind of obvious if you're looking distinctly at every species of dinosaur, but I'm also thinking of just the different hundreds of thousands of years in which they existed. And I think a lot of different instances make it out where only mammals experienced drastic changes in their overall like tooth morphology during the ice age, whereas you probably had and like due to like also consistent climatic changes, you would have also likely had different climatic changes occurring throughout the Mesozoic era, the time of the dinosaurs as well, and even beforehand. So it just might have been a bit less extreme in some instances, especially compared to like the cold, but that would also differ. You have it where the early Cretaceous, in different parts, you would have had it where there were different cold spells, probably also causing a different change in tooth morphology. And the same thing would have occurred. It would have occurred in different parts of the late Cretaceous. The Jurassic seems to be much warmer, especially the late Jurassic. The early Jurassic might have been slightly more mild. It does seem to have gone from a bit of a cooling event during the late Triassic, like 210 million years ago, into the early Jurassic and stayed quite warm for well over like 35 to 40 million years. Okay. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Happy International Arctotherium Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.